Hello, friends. Welcome back to All Things Divine. I am your host, Erica Dontello, and we are back with my re recording of session 2 for the bonus episodes for Black History Month. Now, today I'm going to talk to you about my 11th and 12th great grandfathers, Peter Weare. They both have the same name, and so there was no junior, senior, no first, second. So a lot of their history is intertwined with each other. Now, as you know, our community is here to help you feel safe and secure, deeply centered and grounded within your home. Your home being your mind, body, spirit, soul, and physical environments. And this month, I am here to help you understand Black history on a deeper level. So, welcome to session 2. All right, so again, today we are talking about my 11th and 12th great grandfathers, Peter Weare. But right now, we're going to talk about my 12th great grandfather, Peter Weare. This might get a little confusing, but bear with me. Now, he was born in the year of 1576. And something that's really interesting that I found is that I'm not fully sure about the year of his birth. Now, I definitely don't know his date of birth, but in the documents that I have that he was born in 1576 or 1567, and there are documents to support both of those. Now, this isn't a mixture with my 11th great grandfather because he was born later on, and I actually have his birth date. So, again, I'm not sure if this is a typo or I have no idea. Then I started to think, well, wait a minute, is his dad's name Peter Weare? But of course, I did some research and it was not, so that was helpful. So, whatever year he was born for sure in Brokenborough, Wiltshire, England, Great Britain. And my 12th great grandfather, he was an immigrant settler of Newburyport, Massachusetts colony. So, as he played an important part. He came over from Great Britain and settled into the United States of America. Now, I want to stop right here because I know that some of you listening, you may be thinking, okay, well, he settled into America, but that's not really your great grandfather because they probably owned slaves, and when the slaves were freed, the slaves took the family's last name of their master, quote unquote. And that is true with certain Black history, and I actually did find that on my tree. I want to say decades later, but it was more than decade. Like, usually if I say decades, I mean like 2 to 3. But this was like 100 years later. So I did find that somewhere on my tree, but in this particular case, that did not happen. And actually, the Weare family never owned slaves. Now, there is a lot of information on my grandfathers, and to this exact moment, I still have so many documents that I have not viewed, and I even had more come in this morning. So I want to, before I get a little bit more into this, I want to thank my new cousins in Britain because I know you guys are listening. So, hey, I have been trying to piece together the information about my 11th and 12th great grandfather. Well, maybe I should say ours. Well, they're the uncles to some people, or like great uncles. But we've been trying to piece it together because there's so much history and so much information. And I had 3 of my cousins overseas. Hey, I had them helping me trying to just get stuff and just, like I said, piece it together and try to figure out things because we have the year of his birth being, of my 12th great grandfather's birth being in question, and then just all of these documents and all of these like like British seals coming in. So I was like, oh my gosh. So I just want to give a shout out and say thank you. You know who you are. And I hope that I do this episode justice, because I mean, we were all confused with a lot of things, but I do know the core and I'm not confused about that. So I am here to share this with everyone. So again, my 11th and 12th great grandfather, and just like their family line, which I guess I'm included in that. Hey, but they did not own slaves. So my 12th great grandfather, he was white, is what I'm saying. And yes, I wanted to start with him because I am a woman of color, and there's a lot of surface mentality with people thinking that just because you are darker skin tone you are 100% African. And that might be the case, but in my case, I am a darker tone woman of color, but I am not 100% African. And it's so frustrating when people think that and they just feel that there's no way. And if you do have a white, ancestor anywhere in your tree, it's because they were slave owners. And right here, not the case. So, my 12th great grandfather, it was said that he had a lot of connections to King Philip. Now, there is a book that is no longer published, and it's called A Narrative of the Indian Wars. So we know that King Philip played a huge part in the Indian Wars, and my family, the Weare family, they were part of that. And it's interesting to me, and I would love to read it because it involves two sets of ancestors of mine, which were the British and the Native Indians. Now, I did look up this book because, it's such, I'm going to say, a classic, that there are actual copies of the original print, but it is so expensive. And the cheapest that I found was that I could purchase it for was $600. And then it went all the way up to 3,000. So, needless to say, I did not purchase that book, but I will continue looking to see if I can either get it printed or just maybe find like it cheaper. I'm not trying to pay $600 for a book that I physically saw, and I'm afraid to even touch it because it seems like it might just rip apart or turn into dust as soon as someone touches it. So I didn't get the book, but hopefully I will. Now, I did read documentation that, again, Peter Weare, my 12th great grandfather, did have a close relationship with King Philip. And if you want to know about King Philip, because he's on my family tree because of his relationship with my grandfather, but my great grandfather, but he's not, I'm not in his bloodline, basically, is what I'm trying to say. So if you want to read about that in the Indian War, you definitely can do that. Now, again, Peter Weare, as I said at the beginning of this episode, he had a son who is my 11th great grandfather, and his name was also Peter Weare. So, my 12th great grandfather came to America. I want to say it was actually, I'm talking about my 12th great grandfather. Do you see how I'm getting confused? Came to America around 1638, and they were settled at York, Maine. And he's said to have been prominent. He was a prominent man at York, and he was a recorder of deeds and witnessed an Indian deed. So it is said that he may have been the brother or cousin to Robert of Dedham and also Nathaniel of Hampton, New Hampshire. And with me having the documentation that it is said, I did go to do research, and he actually was the brother to Robert, and he was the cousin to Nathaniel. So that is actually true. And it is possible that they came of a family that lived in Devonshire or Somersetshire, England, since the 14th century. So very strong English roots I have. It's actually, I've taken a DNA test. It's in my DNA. And I just think that that's so cool to share because, again, the core reason for me having this episode is to educate and for you to have really just a deeper education to realize how rich Black history is and to get rid of surface mentality. So, what I read about the Weare family and their siblings and wives and their children were unfortunately mostly captured and killed by Indians. So, as you know, I mentioned King Phillip, and we know that he is responsible for the Indian Wars. We know that they came over from Great Britain, England, and they settled into the United States of America. So, they were taking over land, and they were all part of that, and they were all part of the Indian War and were killed. So what happened, what I found is that the war was so bad that the deaths of my family, my ancestors, the Weare family, it was recorded. Really, the death of everyone during that time started to be recorded. And it doesn't go into detail of what tribe did this. But again, it happened so much that it needed to be documented. And of course, just them coming over, taking over land, it did lead to King Phillip's War. So, to be more detailed, I did a little bit more information of the war and things that happened during that time and in that area. And what I found was the Swansea Massacre. And this is when I am not going to pronounce this name correctly, but I think it's pronounced Waponeg warriors. This is when they attacked a town of Swansea, Massachusetts, killing 7 settlers. So that is the attack that marked that war. And people were still coming over during that war, settling into the United States, and unfortunately, killing my ancestors, the Native Indians. Seek Jesus Heaven Made is a brand that strives to provide high quality Christian apparel for believers and followers of Christ. They have the most affordable and comfortable active and leisure clothing. Now, their mission is to spread the gospel of Christ throughout the world while supporting those on the mission field. And a portion of all sales are donated towards several mission fields. Dedicated to serve and spread the gospel around the world, they want your clothing to start a conversation. Visit them at seekjesus.co. Now, my 12th great grandfather was never captured or killed by Native Indians, but my 11th great grandfather, Peter Weare, he did meet an untimely death with his family members. They were ambushed and killed by Native Indians. And it's so interesting because we hear so much about history, and the information that I found out adds a little different version of what actually happened. Does it make it okay that settlers came over and started taking land? No. But I have documentation that my ancestors were recording Indian deeds and transferring them to settlers. So that could have been what the issue was. Perhaps. Maybe. Maybe that's what really kicked it off. Because just from the information that I researched with my cousins, to us, it seemed like it was just like a big misunderstanding. Like that's what happens most of the time, right? We have settlers that came over like our ancestors and they meant well. And but what they did was they were recording deeds, but taking over the land and giving them to other people that were purchasing them. So you're pushing the Native Indians out of their land and you are not being honest with it. So, again, that is where we saw the aggression came from the Native Indians wanting to take that land back. There may be some historians listening to this right now saying, nope, that is not what happened. But I am telling you that is what happened. That is on my tree. So there's so many people that have different versions. And look, history is not, it's not going to leave you with some loving, gentle feelings of butterflies in your stomach. History is, it's rough to listen to. The truth is, at least. And I am not saying that one group is better than the other. I'm saying that both of these groups are on my tree and both of them were wrong. And I have every right to say that. And that is what I'm trying to get everyone to really understand, that in this case, I would love to say that the innocent party were the Native Americans. And I feel that to a certain extent, but I was not there during that time. And if they are having their land taken over and they're being pushed out and saying the land that you're on, you can't have it anymore because we have this deed now and we have someone who paid for this and this is how we're running things, move out the way. I don't know if I would have started trying to kill them to get them to not come over and take our land. I can't say yes or no to that. I can say that during that time, I do understand why that happened. And it's unfortunate that it led to King Phillip's War. Now, the reason I'm starting with my British family again is because I know I've said this multiple times, but it's because I'm a woman of color. And even just what I literally just said, a lot of us have surface mentality thinking in America, and we have to really do our research and get rid of that so that we can just be educated. So, in this case, again, my great grandfathers, they were not slave owners. They never owned slaves. None of them did. They never took over or owned Native Indians. And when I say took over, I mean like they didn't like take over their land and then capture them and enslave them, but they did take over their land, if that makes any sense at all. So let's not say that they bought slaves over or raped them and that's how they got in. Like, no, they came over, they were a part of history. And I'm actually proud that, just as being a colored girl in school and hearing all of these stories in history class, I my mentality at that time was that, oh, they were all white, so they're talking about everyone white in this room, that's their ancestors. And just that alone, feeling that way when I was younger until now, knowing that, whoa, wait a minute, they were talking about my ancestors as well. Like, it's not that like, oh yes, I'm included. It's like, no, wow, this is really deep. This Black history goes really deep. And I'm saying this so that other little girls and boys of color can do their research and connect the dots on what part of history your family is involved in. And just to know that within my Black history, my family is involved in every part. I'm not saying yay because again, like I said, history is not cute. But I'm just saying, I'm more saying like, wow, I really need to continue on with this series to let everyone know. Now, it is documented proof that the settlers came to America and everyone was fighting. Everyone. There's more documented proof that most villages were taken over and innocent native Indian women, children, elders, they were slaughtered. And you can look up all these massacres that happened in the United States. It happened because of the war. It happened because settlers were coming over and taking over more territory of the United States and forcing them out and slaughtering their villages. And that was what they chose to do to force them out. And it's unfortunate. Now, although I do not agree with what happened, nor the part that they played to my native Indian ancestors, I will honor my Black history by telling the 100% truth. And the Weare family, they did so many things, and to know that my ancestors are part of settlers that came over, even though they were eventually killed by Indians, it makes me feel that I am a true part of history. I mean, I already felt that I was a true part of history because I do have Nigerian in me, but this makes my history have more richness to it. We have to learn to open our minds to what the truth is. And I hope I was able to do that by sharing just a little bit about my 11th and 12th great grandfathers, Peter Weare.